Thank you guys. So, real quick, before I get the sermon, I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about me. My name is Troy. I grew up in Saginaw for basically until now. I just moved out, and I kind of just called it Saganasty. I wasn't really a big fan of Saginaw, but kind of like places like this church has been kind of making me love it again. But I grew up very Christian. Kind of just went to churches my whole life. I remember some of my earliest memories where the pastor gave me a little box. I was cute. And I was kind of just that I kind of always had it and I was kind of always told answers, but I never learned to seek them. And that was kind of just like my life growing up. And then eventually over on in high school, just I heard things like read the Bible, it's really important. But I was like, when I'm older, or but I prayed every night, so I'm good and all that stuff. And eventually we just stopped going to church because we had problems with that and I just wasn't attending anything. And through that I became very lukewarm. And then after high school, I had my first job working at Texas Roadhouse as their best busboy in the world, cleaning those tables like no other. And I just remember seeing a revival in Texas, and this went on for like a week or two straight, and it was just thousands of kids going in there just worshiping straight. And I pray to God, man, I wish I had some Christians of my age to hang out with. Is that even real? And then one day he showed me a Snapchat story by Shelby. I went to high school with her, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know you're a Christian. And she's like, yeah, I am now. I'm like, whoa. So then I was very skeptical about it at first because like, man, like I don't like any churches. They're all weird. Like with like my last church, I thought that was the good one, and not even that one's good. So I was very skeptical. Then she told me about it. I was like, you know what? I'll give it a chance. And then I came there, and well, here I am now. Uh, the stuff that Gap has done for me has been amazing. I started off as just some 18-year-old high school, just finished high school goober working at Texas Roadhouse, and now I have a wife. I know what the book Ecclesiastes is. I know how to pronounce Job. And I'm now even able to give you guys a sermon. But the amount of leadership and training that I've got from amongst the people here and the people spending so much time to mentor me really changed my life. There was a time where I had to do job training in Lansing and my car got totaled, and people from Gap drove me to Lansing and back every week. If there's ever a place where I thought that you couldn't get more from, it's Gap. Every single time you think you hit the limit, they give you more. They're here for you more. They do more for you. And I'm very thankful for them. And I would not be the man I am today if not for them. I'd still probably be some goober. And here I am married with a wife with a kid coming by. And yeah, I just want to let you guys know that and just think about your lives and all the ways that God has moved and all the different things that has happened as I gave you the sermon. Now, for the first reading, you heard about Joseph's dreams. And the second, you kind of heard about the end of his life, with the kids and the happiness and him saving Egypt. And I'm going to get to that. But first, I want to go back all the way to the very beginning. We were building bundles of grain. No, we were binding bundles of grain out in the field when suddenly my bundle rose and stood upright, while your bundles gathered around mine and bowed down to it. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. He said, listen, he said, I had another dream. And this time the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. These were the dreams of a 17-year-old boy. He wasn't even a man yet, he was just a boy. And he would one day save the known world from famine and extinction. And he would rise to become the second most powerful man in Egypt, right hand to the Pharaoh himself. His name was Joseph. But how did he get there? For those unaware, he didn't even live in Egypt. He lived in a little small area, like a tiny bit away, that had 12 tribes, not even a uniform kingdom. And they didn't even serve, like, Joseph didn't even serve any of the gods of the region. He served Yahweh. And it was weird. Like, there's no reason for him to end up in Egypt. And God blessed his last three descendants, no, ancestors, like his grandfather, his great grandfather, and his father to stay in the region. And he blessed them all. And he thought that he would have probably grown up, that he probably would have had this blessing too. And Joseph was loved most by his father. He was the one that recently just came out, and he was the youngest one. And uh, Isaac loved him. He came really at like a late age, and Jacob, which his father, wasn't expecting him. And growing up with these blessings and hearing about these stories, he probably never intended to leave. Now, being the youngest, and I'm pretty sure some of you guys have older siblings, the youngest is the most irritating one. I was the youngest myself, and I still hear about how annoyed my siblings were with me. So being annoyed at their little sibling that is loved most by their father, and now, oh look, young Joseph now has this really cool coat. Wish we had that. Wish we had that growing up. They hated him. They were really angry with Joseph just for breathing, I guess. And now he's doing about these dreams about them like bowing around him as like the stars and the hay. Like, what's this guy on about? Anyways, they didn't like him. Basically, that's just cut and dry. They just didn't like him. And they're like, man, you know what'd be good right now if we didn't have Joseph in our lives. So they planned and deceded, and they had a plan to get rid of him. So Joseph, completely unaware of this, he probably knew his brothers didn't like him, but he probably didn't know how much. He went on, and as time went on, he just kept on brewing and brewing and brewing and growing on until it just got too much. And one day he visited his brothers in a nearby town, and his brothers had a plan. They're like, we're going to kill him. Now, one of the brothers named Reuben didn't really like that idea, kind of favored Joseph a little bit. So he's like, instead of killing him, let's just, I don't know, sell him to slavery. So they beat him up, threw him down a well, which is yikes, and then grabbed his coat and tore it up and threw blood on it. And then they sold him off to slavery. Now, poor Joseph was just trying to see his brothers. And next thing you know is these people that he loved so much, his dear family, beat him up and betrayed him. And they sold him to slavery. And this 17-year-old boy that had no idea why is now gone from his family, stripped from everything, gone. No chance of rescue, no chance of escape, no chance of help. And he had no idea why. Luckily, though, God was with him. God is with him, and God loves him. And he sent him to the captain of the guard's house. Now, already that's already a lot. Joseph could have been sent straight to the workforce to build the pyramids, and that would have been rough. But God already had favor in him and sent him to this guy's house. His name was Potiphar. Now, Joseph was very special, not because he was just better, not because he was born a certain way, but because he chose the Lord in every action he did. He owed Potiphar nothing. He was sold as a slave. He was ripped away from his family. He lost his really cool coat. He owed nothing, but he still worked his hardest, and he worked tirelessly and earnestly for Potiphar. And as years went on, just Potiphar trusted him. And he said, you know what? You're now the head of the slaves. And Joseph, through his position, blessed by God, was now managing all the slaves around him. Still a slave, but like the head slave. He still made no money because, he's a slave, but he still worked his hardest. And, well, unfortunately, that's not the end because Satan had plans for him. But fortunately for Joseph, God also had plans for him. So Potiphar's wife was really into Joseph, like really into him. She thought he was the nicest thing in town, more than her own wife, more than her own husband, which really sucks for him. And she come on trying to get with him. But Joseph, loving God and caring for Potiphar, which he's serving under, was like, nah, I don't want that. And then time after time after time, she kept on going after him. He was like, nah, nah. And then one time, her anger boiled so brightly that she did one big move. When they were alone in the house together, she was like, I need you. And then it was so much for him, he just ran away. She had him so gripped up that she ripped his cloak out of him as he was running. He said, oh no. And he dashed. He didn't even care. Like he was probably wearing nothing, just running, trying to get out of there. It was scary for him. And faithfully serving Potiphar as much as he could only led to his demise because Potiphar's wife, boiling in anger, went up to Potiphar first thing and said, this man tried to force himself on me, and showed him the cloak. This man has done nothing wrong. He only served Potiphar. He only breathed. And this is the second time he was massively betrayed. His brothers got rid of him to slavery. And this woman just lied about him. And now he's in prison. He didn't deserve any of this. Nothing he did was wrong. So now he's in prison, and most of us, we lose like our job, our cat dies or anything. We're like, God, why? What are we doing? Why have you abandoned me? Well, this guy has done everything right and now is rotting in an Egyptian prison for years, and he still hung on to God. And Joseph, being the man that he is, still going after God and still having God's blessings on him, he decided to serve there faithfully too. And after a while, the guard there, after working honestly and trustfully, he was the head of the prisoners. And and instead of just sitting down, wallowing in just despair and defeat and the heat, he worked and continued. And eventually, God appointed two people to him, a baker and a cupbearer. They had two dreams. The cupbearer had a dream, and then the baker also had a dream. Those were the two dreams. But Joseph completely accurately deciphered them and said to the baker, "You will be executed in 2 weeks," and to the cupbearer, "You will be released." And well, the time went by and it happened. Now God brought him these things and helped him through it, but it didn't immediately help him. Honestly, it just seemed random. It was just him honoring God because the cupbearer instantly forgot about him. So for another 2 years, he sat there rotting, doing nothing. And it wasn't until God was allowing a famine to reach the whole land that he decided to use Joseph and help out Joseph at the same time. So what this famine was going on is he was going to give Egypt 7 years of prosperity and health, and then 7 years of famine and drought and exhaustion. And that would have completely toppled all these people. And Egypt was like the big dogs at the time. That would have just destroyed them. It would have been rough. And he gave Pharaoh a dream. And one thing I want you guys to understand is God appoints every leader to where they are. Your boss, your teacher, your governor, your mayor, your dad, your mom, he appoints them to you. And no matter how high up you think they are from you, no matter how high up, he still rules over them. He still reigns over them. God himself gave Pharaoh dreams. He told Pharaoh this. Pharaoh didn't just know this. He wasn't just the guy. And in fact, God told him this in a way that Pharaoh couldn't even understand. So the first thing Pharaoh did is went to all of his wizards, his scribes, his fancy people, his sages, and none of them knew it except one guy rotting in a dungeon. And his cupbearer, out of shock, like, "Whoa, I know a guy. He's really cool. His name's Joseph." And then Pharaoh immediately said, "Get him here right now." And then Joseph went up to Pharaoh. And this is the one moment that a slave who was a prisoner rotting was speaking to an emperor. And he completely successfully deciphered these dreams. And Pharaoh was really impressed. And God leading Joseph to that position, God leading Pharaoh to being impressed, said, "Good job. I'm now going to make you in charge of gathering up these resources. I'm going to make you in charge of this." And as you heard from the scripture, well, they got saved. He built up those 7 years of food that he couldn't even count anymore. He was blessed with two amazing kids, and he named those kids meanings are like, "Thank you, God. Thank you." And just, he was given all these silk robes. He got his fancy coat again, and life was good, and Egypt survived. But God didn't just do that. That's not just the end of his story. It's not just a happy ending, because there's still two dreams that Joseph had. And those were about the sheaves and the stars. So unfortunately for Joseph's family, which Joseph, was exalted and kind of brought up at this point, good for him. He's now the second reigning man in Egypt. That's not it, because this famine affected his family. His father, desperate for any food, any sort of money, he had money, but for food and survival, sent out Joseph's 10 brothers out. And those brothers had to go all the way to Egypt, going through the desert, just hoping for some food. And there they met an administrator. And when they went up to him asking for food, they didn't see they didn't see what they were expecting. They saw shock, a little bit of fear, and a little bit of sadness. And as they went asking this guy for food, he ran away. Now imagine going to like the DMV or something, asking for papers, and the guy just runs away. But this is to save your life. You'd be a little like, what's going on? Anyways, Joseph ran away, knowing and recognizing his 12 brothers, And at this point, this is like 12 years going past, he's completely unrecognizable. Like Joseph was 17 when he was sold to slavery. He's now 30. This has been years. And for all these years, those dreams have not came true yet. For all these years, he's been going through slavery, dungeons, torment, just everything, just trying to rip everything away from him. And he stayed true. And then now these 10 brothers come up to him and he has to decide whether he's going to forgive them or not, whether he's going to feed his family or not. These people ripped his life from him. He was just a little boy and they ripped it from him mercilessly. But he wept and then he came back and he tested them. He wasn't just going to give in immediately. He wanted to see if they're the same, if they even deserved it. So he told them, you guys are spies, because he heard about another brother that was born, a new youngest. And he wanted to see if they felt towards this youngest that they felt towards him. So he said, you guys are spies for a foreign country. Come back and bring me your brother. So he sent them away. Still no food, still hungry, still starving. They're like, man, what's going on? So then they go all the way back, and then they come all the way back to Egypt, now with the 11th brother Benjamin. So the first time that they came to the administrator was the first time that the 10 things of wheat were, that the things of wheat were bowing around him. So that's the first dream done. Now they come back again with the 11th, which is the 11 stars, and they come to the administrator and bow down to him again, which fulfills the second dream. And what happens is they come up and he has a feast for them, but this is just a plot. Because amongst his feast, he has his servants hide a silver cup in Benjamin's bag and he has them go away. Like he gives them the food. And then as they're departing, he says, hey, there's a thief. Now, this would be a royal offense. Like he could execute all of them and then the rest of his family for this. This is intense. And he catches Benjamin. He says, hey, Benjamin stole from me. And then he saw his brothers immediately start weeping and breaking down and offering a sacrifice, whatever they have to save Benjamin. And within this, and God moving within them, he broke down and cried with them, which would be really weird. And he told them, I'm Joseph. And upon this realization, they all just wept together. And once again, they were all a family. So then they came back with the food and then told they told Jacob and then their mom, and then they came over, and then Joseph was once again reunited with his dad, which in the second part of the second dream said the sun and the moon, which is this dad and the mom. And that was completely reunited again. And the Pharaoh gave them a town called Goshen when they got to settle there, and all their descendants got to spread and spread and spread. And it was a really big happy ending. Now, Joseph didn't deserve any of this. He didn't, like everything from the very beginning, he didn't deserve any of his judgment. I mean, his harsh treatment. Why did God allow it? Why did God allow him to become a slave in the first place? Where's the justice in this? Why did God allow him to be in a desert? Why didn't God absolutely just murder the family in the very beginning? Why is Potiphar's wife still alive? Why is God allowing the suffering to happen? And that's kind of the point of the sermon. The point of the sermon is that sometimes for us to do what we need to do, sometimes for us to realize what we need to understand, sometimes for us to get where we need to be, our world has to shake. Everything has to blow up. Everything has to change. God moves and he uses tragedy to bring us closer to him. And God is really good in that way, that there's nothing that can get us away from him. And there's nothing that's not in his plan. So, 1 second. Anyways, at the very end, Joseph went up to them and he said, what Satan meant for evil, God used for good. And through this, I was able to save the lives of many people. And I want you guys to think of something. What if God skipped all these steps? What if he was never a slave? What if he was never a prisoner? What if Potiphar's wife never lied? And then what if there's never even a famine? Well, if Joseph was never a slave, then he could have never told the Pharaoh about the drought, and they would have never survived. But if there was never even a famine, then how would God have ever reached Egypt? He used Joseph and those dreams and that prosperity to lead Egypt to him. And during this drought, all kingdoms all around came to Egypt, and God used this moment to show everybody who he was. God used this tragedy of this drought to lead everybody around them to him using Joseph. And if that would have never happened, this would have never happened. And since he loves us, he sent us Joseph. Since he loved the Egyptians, he sent them him. And God, from the very beginning, had a plan to lead Joseph out of it and be their safety. And he rescued them. And every point in human history, God has led us. Every single thing, kingdom, empire, person, they're all intertwining and they all lead to each other. If Joseph had never been there, then like his descendants would have never grown up, and they never would have been able to have enough strength or people or money or power eventually through Moses to escape, because Moses was one of these Jews. Well, not Moses was one of these slaves. Those slaves would have never existed. Moses and these numbers would have never grew and took over the promised land. They would have never formed a kingdom. David, Saul, King Solomon, none of them would have existed. They would have never had this empire built up. And then the period of the judges, and then would have never happened. And then none of the Jews would have been brought out everywhere due to kingdoms taking them over and dispersing them. And if that wouldn't have happened, then Daniel would have never been able to bring them back. Daniel would have never been able to go to King Nebuchadnezzar, which owned the largest country of the world, Babylon, and bring them closer to God. And through that, he could have never rebuilt the whole Israel again. He would have never been able to rebuild it using Esther and all of them. And basically, a lot of kingdoms would not have been able to know who God was through this. And if that wouldn't have happened, then whenever they were dispersed, whenever they were brought out, then actually to a point, Jesus would have not been able to be there because none of the Jews would have been out. So if not for Joseph, this one part all over here, none of this would have happened because these people wouldn't even be here at this point. And look at all these tragedies that happened. Moses was a tragedy his whole life. He was born and everybody around him was just getting killed. And even before him, tragedies happened like the flood. God uses these tragedies and he uses these big things to bring us closer to him. And he brings it so that his point in his life can get through. Now, rough things happen in our life, and God is there to help us through it. He's always going to protect us. He's always going to guide us. But it doesn't mean he doesn't want us to get through it. Because look at the Jews. Look at the kingdom of Judah. Constantly, time after time, he would raise them up. They get cocky and they fall down. They'd step away from him. So then it's not until he crushes them that they come back to him. It's not until he gives them a new judge that they come back to him. And this happens time after time after time. We need God to always be crushing us and belittling us and showing us what we are, or else we will always stray away from him. We will never actually be what we're supposed to be. And sometimes it's not even just to put us somewhere, but it's to teach us more. Like, look at Job. God had Job go through all this just to teach him a little more, and he blessed him with everything back. Sometimes he brings us through stuff just to teach us and to bring us closer to him and to show us more stuff. And just life's weird. The book of Proverbs tells us that if you do this, good things will happen. If you do that, this will happen. A lot of Christian denominations believe that if you give all your money to like the church or everything, you have the best life ever. But that's not promised. Sometimes bad things do happen, and you just have to trust that God will lead you through it. And there were a lot of times, like in Joseph's life, where God promised him through these first two dreams that people will bow down to him. But that didn't happen until 30 years. And through this first little bit, he kept on getting knocked down, sent to slavery, sent to a dungeon, rotting. God's promises to you are never really instant. Well, they might be sometimes, but a lot of times they're not. And we like to first hear what he says, and then instantly, when the first thing gets rough, is back down. And like I said earlier, God appoints your leaders. He appoints this whole timeline we're in. He appoints everything. He appointed you to where you are. If he wants you where you are, then you are where you are. You're where he wants you. There's nothing you can do that can completely go against his plan. Pharaoh was an absolute pagan. He went against everything God was doing in this country. And God still used him and led him in the right way. And I want you guys to apply this to yourselves and use it for you. That if you're going through a tough time, God has not abandoned you. He's either just teaching you something or bringing you closer to him for a better understanding. And that sometimes things might seem unfair, but if Joseph was never a slave, he would have never been able to eventually become the talk to the Pharaoh. If he was never a prisoner, he would have never talked to the Pharaoh. He would have never saved the people from the drought. Sometimes God puts you in a lower position to help out others in that position. He brings you down to bring up others because there's other people out there that he needs your help to reach that you would not have been able to help otherwise. And whatever your role is, whatever your job is, whatever you're doing in your life, just trust that he has you there for a reason and trust that he will get you out of it or further into it, whatever it is, and you better do it right. Whether you think like, man, my boss is dumb, I can't work for him, or you think that this is wrong or that is wrong, you have to because God appointed him over you. And if he can use Pharaoh, he can use your boss. And he has just rule over them. So be like Joseph. When everything seems against you, when you don't deserve any, when you don't deserve any of the treatment you have against going towards you, still work your best. Do your best. Follow your mission to the truest and to the fullest. Because God is using you for a purpose you don't even understand. And you have to use your position the best way possible. Because sometimes you might be in a dungeon, but that's how you meet the cupbearer. And even if you don't get the credit immediately, God will give it to you when it's your time. And with that, I want you to talk to each other about some of these prompts that are coming up, these two, and just think about all the times that God has used your life and just about all the tragedies that are going on and how he's going to get you through it. Thank you.